Recording. We're going to start. Vamos a empezar. Y muy buenos días. Muy buenos días. Aquí viene Trish. Okay, we got Trish coming in too. Excelente. Bien, vamos a practicar más con el pasado. I welcome all your questions, of course. Scottsdale has asked me to promote that registration for all of their classes for fall. Hard for me to be thinking about fall. Registration for fall starts July 25th, online, 8 a.m. So fall classes, it will be July 25th starts registration process, just so that you know that date. And yes, the booklets did get out. If you are a non-Scottsdale resident, that means it's July 26th for the first registration date. So it depends on your locale. Okay. Bien. Vamos a practicar con el pasado. We're going to practice more with the past. We're going to do more of our ER and IR verbs in true preterite. We're going to do a little more listening with some practicing to see if you can recognize when we use one kind of past tense, el imperfecto, versus a different kind of past tense, the preterito, all that. And I'll take any of your questions. Vale. ¿Dónde está? ¿Dónde está? Where is it? I'm going to ask, because I don't think I'm going to play this per se, but our little Pepe el Mosquito, la historia de Pepe el Mosquito. Did you guys, were you able to see how they were flip-flopping back between the two past tenses? Yeah. This is a thing almost always in Spanish. This is why it's such a complex topic and why it takes such a long time to get used to it. It is just the kind of thing that, we do separate out, oh, we'll practice all your preterite forms. Oh, we'll practice all of your imperfect forms. But the two start to collide in a real hurry in any kind of story. It's just impossible to avoid that. So we're going to open with some practice first, if that's okay with all of you, on just these preterite forms, so you get used to, here's how they sound. And I'm going to put a little screen up so that we see which ones we're practicing with today. Aquí están, here they are. This preterito, what we call preterite. And by the way, the grammatical name for this tense gets like 3 or 4 or 5 different names, which is like unimportant to you. So like in videos, they'll call it by different names, but in English, generally we call it preterito, preterite. And these are our conjugations. These are the conjugations for the regular preterite, which, sadly, there are going to be a lot of irregulars. We're going to start to look at some of those probably this week, a little bit, probably for homework. Sadly, happily, these imperfectos, the aba and ia verbs, are so beautifully easy to learn because we only have 3 verbs in the whole language that are irregular. So it's very predictable how to use imperfecto. It's always going to have an aba kind of ending, or an ia kind of ending, whether it's an AR or an ER, IR verb, right? And preterito will separate again into AR endings and ER, IR endings. But the sad thing is there are tons and tons of irregulars that will kind of have some of these endings, but not always. And it becomes very confusing and very much a memorization kind of thing. So what's going to happen is we're going to practice the regular preterite endings, what those sound like. And I have to limit us to a very small number of verbs because sadly, a lot of the very, very commonly used verbs wind up being irregulars. They won't perfectly have these kinds of endings, but you do have to get used to what the regular endings are like. And last week we focused a lot, on these AR endings, right? AR endings, and we're going to review that just a little bit. We're going to review that a little bit. And the other thing we're going to review is that most stem changes do not happen in preterite. So verbs like empezar will not get that IE stem change, right? IR, notice this is an AR verb. IR verbs that are stem changers, and it has to be following those two categories. It has to be both an IR verb that is also a stem changer. They do get a stem change, but we're not going to deal with that for a while. But AR verbs and ER verbs that are stem changers won't have a stem change. So this becomes, empecé, I started, I began. Empezaste, you began. Empezó, he or she began. Empezamos, we began. And empezaron, they began. So AR verbs are nice, if they're nice and easy to conjugate, really. One suggestion that is often made, and I think it's kind of helpful because it becomes kind of daunting to say, oh, shoot, I just thought I had my life together with conjugating regular verbs in present tense. It is often suggested that you just try to memorize the yo form and then the él, ella, usted form for preterite first, so that you'd learn to talk about yourself and one other person, yourself and one other person, okay? The Vosotros is not hard to memorize because it's very similar to what you're used to with presente. So that one isn't tough. So one kind of technique for starting to get comfortable with regular preterites is to just get used to focus mostly on the yo form and the él, ella, usted form. And that means you're going to have to get used to that, the stress. Okay, we stress that accent mark. We stress that last syllable. Okay, so the hard thing to get used to is that it's hablé, I spoke, or empecé, I began, okay? Or empezó, he began, right? Not empezó, empezó. So getting used to that punching that last syllable for first person singular and third person singular is a good thing to practice, okay? Today, we're going to focus more on some practice with ER and IR verbs, okay? And just to review so that you know which ones we are talking about, because pretty soon we're going to pull out the other prompts that we didn't get to last week, and we're going to work on those. ER and IR verbs are going to share, if they are regular, and yes, you just have to know, if they are regular, they're going to share these kinds of endings, okay? And that will be, again, a vowel ending for yo, e, but an e that has an accent mark. So again, we're punching the last syllable, just like we punched the last syllable with the e ending. It'll be e, but with an accent mark, con acento, okay? Iste, there's our tu form, iste, just sweet, like we had aste, you can tell that has an a sound in it, therefore it's for an AR verb. This has an e sound in it, so it's for an ER and IR verb. Iste, okay? El, usted, it'll be yo, I, o together, okay? And the o is the one that gets the punch. So yo, we'll do some examples before we go into our written prompts that I had sent to you. Nosotros, again, will be an easy one to get used to because it sounds so much like IR verbs in presente. It is exactly the same kind of ending, imos. But ER verbs will also get that imos. So always imos, right? This is the vosotros, just so that you know what it is. It's the iste with an is tagged on to the end of it, right? They only use that one in Spain. Latin America does not use vosotros, so we won't really practice that a lot. And this one, which will be third person, plural, the ellos or ellas, ustedes form, hieron, okay? So again, you do have some little handles to help you, and that is that the ellos form always gets an end sound, right? Nosotros always gets a mos ending, right? We notably have the S at the end missing on tu. The S at the end is missing for tu. This is the only tense where the tu ending does not get an S at the end, the only one. So again, we're going to recommend that you focus a little more on the yo ending of I and the usted ending of yo. Okay. And we're going to do some, we're going to take some super regular vanilla flavored words to practice. Okay. We will practice all the forms, but more focus on yo and usted for our spoken practice later. So comer becomes comí. I ate, comí, right? Tú will be comiste, right? Él or ella, usted gets an I-O, but we punch the O at the end. Comió, right? Comimos, instead of comemos en presente, it's comimos, we ate, and comieron, okay? So we're going to work a few ones that are regular, and I really have to pick and choose because there are so many irregulars. It is sad. Okay, but let's start with some ER verbs. Aprender, to learn, right? Yo aprendí, bien, aprendí. Tú aprendiste, right? Él or ella or usted will become aprendió. Nosotros will become not aprendemos like you're used to, but aprendimos. It gets an I. Aprendimos. We learned. And ellos, ellas, ustedes aprendieron. Third person plural has like a lot of syllables. That winds up being a long verb form. Aprendieron. Okay. A ver. Algo breve, beber. Yo bebí, tú bebiste, él, ella, usted, or did I say aprendiste? Let me start at the beginning. Bebí, bebiste, bebió, right? Nosotros bebimos, we drank. Bebieron, they drank, bebieron. Ellos bebieron, ellas bebieron, ustedes bebieron. Okay. A ver, let's take one that normally would have in presente, in present, a stem change, but because it's an A or ER category, will not get a stem change ever in preterito. So we get volví, I came back. Volví. You came back, for tú will become volviste, right? Él or ella or usted becomes volvió. Nosotros becomes volvimos. We came back, we returned, right? Ellos, ellas, ustedes volvieron. Okay. Bien, perfecto. Una más, one more. IR verb is going to share those same endings. So we're going to have yo escribí, I wrote. Tú escribiste. Él or ella or usted escribió. He or she wrote, right? Nosotros escribimos y ellos, ellas, ustedes escribieron. They wrote, escribieron. All right. That third person plural becomes the long and hard one to pronounce because it's a bunch of syllables. Okay. A ver, let's see. Okay. I think because of the number of people we've got in today, maybe we won't do a small. Is it okay if we don't do this all as a big group instead of a small group breakout? Yeah, because we get a smaller group. And okay, vamos a ver. Let's do a share screen here so everybody can see which prompts we're working with. We're going to work with aprender, and we're going to conjugate the verb, and then we're going to add some other information onto it. Okay. And I can't see everybody when I put my share screen on. I can only see some of you. So if you're raising your hand, I'm not ignoring you. I can't see you. Okay. So speak up, in other words. And if you interrupt a little, no big deal. Okay. We're going to work with aprender. I'm going to try to make this a little bit bigger in case you don't have a printed version. Mucho mejor, mucho mejor. Ooh, and I don't have a 3 on this one. Okay, a ver. There we go. Okay, we're going to take a look at aprender. Learned. And notice in English, we generally use ED in English to get this idea across. Learned, returned. Oh, but we don't say eated, and we don't say seed unless it's something you're planting in the ground. It's not an action. Seed is not an action. Yeah. So we have lots and lots and lots of irregular, oddball, weird, rule breaking past tenses in English as well. Ate sure doesn't look like eat, except it flipped around the letters into like a totally different order, right? Instead of seed, we say saw. So even English has lots of weird irregulars. Okay, aprender, learned. Let's see if we can talk a little bit using a yo form. Talk about what you learned. Yo aprendí 20 palabras nuevas. I learned 20 new words. Aprendí 20 palabras nuevas en francés. Aprendí 20 palabras nuevas en francés. Bien? Okay. Anybody else want to use a yo form with aprender to talk about what they learned?
Aprendí.
Oh. Diana, let's take Diana first.
Aprendí más sobre Preterito ayer.
Bien, perfecto.
Aprendí muchas palabras en español la semana pasada.
Excelente, muy bien.
Aprendí,
Go ahead.
Okay. Aprendí a andar en bicicleta cuando era joven.
Muy bien. Aprendí a andar en bicicleta. I'm going to show you one extra thing about aprender. When we say I learned a thing, but when we change it a little bit to say I learned to ski, I learned, to bake croissants. No, I didn't. Actually, I did watch a video on that this year. It was too long. It takes too long. It's so buy it. Don't bake it. How many times are you going to beat that dough to get the butter in? Forget it. Let a professional do it. Okay. So when you're saying you're learning to do something, we need one little extra word. We need a little extra word. So if it's with an activity, if it's with a verb, then it's aprender, and we need and infinitivo. Okay, so we have a little addition, and that little addition is we need that little itty bitty word in between the form of aprender and the second verb, the thing you learned to do. Okay, bien. Okay, otras ideas.
Ayer aprendí que el restaurante Cooper's Hawk es muy bueno.
Okay,
Okay.
bien, bien. Okay, ¿qué más? What else?
Aprendí a preparar 3 recetas para cantaloupe.
Bien.
Oh,
Sí, aprendí a preparar. We have our little extra word. Excelente. ¿Algo más? Okay. How about something that somebody else learned? So not aprendí, I learned, but aprendió. See? Oh, mi gato negro aprendió a abrir la puerta.
uh-oh.
Aprendió a abrir la puerta. Es un gato muy listo. He's clever little stinker. Okay. Aprendió a abrir. He learned to open the door.
Mi nieto aprendió a manejar un carro.
Aprendió a manejar. Uy, sí. Es algo muy estresante, ¿no? Yeah, it's a stressful thing. Okay. Bueno, ¿qué más?
Mi nieta aprendió leer en su escuela.
Aprendió a leer. She learned to read. Excelente. ¿Qué más?
En la clase a los lunes, Monday,
Sí.
Larry aprendió que él vive cerca de, I'm struggling here, but cerca de mí.
Cerca de mí, sí, cerca de mi casa. Bien,
Oh.
bien, excelente. Sí, muy bien. Fantástico. Sí. Bueno, ok. Bueno, ¿qué más con aprender? Talking about somebody else. Any other example? Otro ejemplo.
Mi nieta aprendió a hablar cuando tenía 18 meses.
18 meses. Cuando
Muy joven.
tenía. Aprendió a hablar cuando tenía, cuando tenía 18 meses. Sí. Excelente. Bueno. ¿Algo más? Or should we move on to comer? Comer. Ate. Tell what you ate yesterday. Ayer comí una ensalada y una pizza. Comí un trozo de pizza ayer. Comí.
Ayer comí el primer mes de la temporada.
Okay.
I don't understand that. What was it, Diane?
El primer mes yo comí el primer mes de la temporada.
But mes,
Mes, the first corn of the season.
The first
oh, maíz,
corn.
maíz.
Maíz.
It sounded a little like mes,
Oh.
sí, maíz.
Maíz.
Ah, okay, maíz. And, okay, algo importante, maíz sí es corn. In Mexico, it is more common to hear it used as elote.
Oh,
Elote. I will put it on the screen here so that you can see this. Elote is just the vocab word for corn. Okay. There is yet a different word for when you're talking about the whole corn cob.
well, it
but-
is the first corn cob, the first
Yeah.
corn on the cob of the season. So that's a
Um,
different word yet?
Well, a corn cob is like mazorca. 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 Mazorca would be like an ear of corn. But really, this is what people use when they talk about having corn on the cob. Corn on the cob, that's elote. And it is sold, seasoned and yeah, a lot of the food trucks sell it as elote. Yeah, so elote is the most common. So we'll underline that. That's the most common way you'll hear it referred to from folks in Mexico. Okay, bien. Bueno, ¿qué más?
Ayer
Oh.
comí unas verduras, un poco queso y pollo a la parrilla.
Pollo a la parrilla, grilled chicken. Pollo a la parrilla. Excelente. ¿Qué más? What else for yo? Yo comí, I ate.
Comí granola por desayuno.
Excelente. Cereales, ¿sí? Fantástico. ¿Qué más para comí? Any other comí examples? Comí?
Comí pollo con muchas vegetales ayer.
Muchos vegetales. Pollo con vegetales. Excelente. Okay. What someone else ate. Bien, sí. Mi esposo comió 4 huevos. Esta mañana mi esposo comió 4 huevos. Es una dieta keto, a keto diet, loads of eggs. Okay. 4 huevos.
En un día.
Para el desayuno. Ay, pero también caminó 8 millas a las 10 de la noche. Ay, a las 10 de la noche, ¿sí? Se fue, he took off, se fue y caminó 8 millas anoche. Entonces, sí, tenía mucha hambre esta mañana. So from after he didn't eat anything after he walked, but boy, was he hungry this morning. Okay. Comió 4 huevos. Okay. ¿Qué más? Something with comió, somebody else ate. Comió.
Mi
Mi esposo-
esposo comió un pastel de chocolate.
Fantástico. Sí, normal. Pastel de chocolate. Me gusta.
What is pastel?
Pastel. Pies or cakes
Ah.
are usually called pastel. Pasteles.
Mi esposa comió un salamero. I hope that's smoothie.
Okay. Bien. Okay. Bueno. ¿Quién más? Who else has got a comió example?
Mi esposo comió helado ayer.
Helado. Excelente. Sí, helado. Muy popular durante el verano, ¿no? Es muy popular. Bien. Bueno, algo más? Something more? Should we move on to our next verb, volver? Okay, volver. I'm going to add one little thing to this. Volver means returned, or we might say came back. Those both mean the same thing. They both use in Spanish that verb volver, and whereas we are used to that volver en presente, in present, it gets a UE, vuelvo, vuelves, vuelve. Pero en pretérito no tiene el cambio. It does not get that stem change at all in preterite when we talk about the past. So if somebody returned or came back, talk about when you came back home. Sí, volví a casa. Fui a la ferretería. I went to the hardware store this morning. You do not want to know why. Fui a Ace Hardware. Fui a la ferretería. I went to the hardware store. Y volví a casa a las 7:30 de la mañana.
Muy temprano.
Muy temprano. Sí, tenía que comprar madera. I had to buy wood. Yeah. I have many falling over barrel cacti that have to be propped up. Ooh. Yeah. We're sawing wood today, later in the day. Okay. Volví a casa a las 7:30. Okay.
Volví a casa desde el gimnasio a las 4.
A las 4. Okay.
Do you say where you're returning
¿4 en la
from?
mañana? ¿A las 4 en la mañana?
De la mañana.
Well, I wrote this. That was true. It was no, a las 4
De la tarde.
de la tarde.
De la tarde. De la tarde. Okay. And so this gives us a little practice on time things, right? A las with the hour, a las 4. And then if you want to specify AM or PM with that 4 o'clock thing, it will be de la tarde, a las 4 de la tarde. Okay? Okay. ¿Qué más? Who else has got a volví?
Volví a mi casa después de dormir en casa de mis amigas.
Bien, sí. Excelente. After sleeping at a friend's house. Excelente. Volví a casa. I came home. Fantástico. ¿Qué más?
Volví a casa de la lunes? Monday? How do you say on Monday?
El lunes.
Oh, just el lunes.
Volví a casa el lunes. Sí. Eso es.
And with volví, would you say from where? Then how do you add that in there?
Oh.
Or do you need, should you?
Okay. Volví a casa. A casa tells where you're going to wind. Always tells where you're going to wind up at the end.
That's-
Yeah.
Okay,
But
volví is that word.
if you want to have, if you want to emphasize the place you left, you could use de, volví, or volví de mis vacaciones. I returned from my vacation.
Okay,
Volví de mis vacaciones, ¿sí?
okay.
Algo así, something like that. Okay. Bien. Okay, how about a volvió? Let's talk about somebody else who returned. Después de caminar, after walking, después de caminar 8 millas, after walking 8 miles, después de caminar 8 millas, mi esposo volvió a casa a las 10:30 de la noche. No había nadie en el parque. He reported there was exactly nobody at the park. No había nadie en el parque.
¿Por qué?
¿Por qué? Porque la temperatura a las 10:30 de la noche, estábamos a la temperatura de 99 grados. We were still at 99 at 10:30. I said, and you're surprised there was no one at the park, really? No había nadie, ni nadie con perros, not even anybody with dogs. Pah, pues no, of course not. Claro que no, claro que no. Ok, pero volvió a las 10:30 de la noche. Bueno, algo más.
Cuando
Y-
nuestro vecino volvió, no había electricidad.
Ah, no había, there was no electricity. Sí, cuando volvió no había electricidad. Uy, sí. Ok,
Mi hija volvió a casa después de comprar.
okay, bien. We could even say something like, la temporada del monzón, monsoon season. La temporada del monzón volvió al valle esta semana. The monsoon returned, yeah, to the valley this week. Bien, bien. ¿Algo más con volvió?
Mi esposo volvió a nuestra casa de su clase de Tai Chi.
Bien, perfecto. Excelente, muy bien. Okay, we're going to talk a little bit about ver. Ver is sometimes considered an irregular verb when people study it out of a textbook. I'm not really quite sure why, because it does follow the rules. I think the reason they do that is that technically it does not get the accent marks that we put in the chart. So the accent marks that you see here, you would think that the yo form gets an accent mark, and actually long ago, like 40 years ago, it did, but they changed the rules. Yeah, they can do that in Spanish. That people, there's a group of guys that can change the rules. So whereas you would think you should have an accent mark with this ending and this ending, they used to 40 years ago, but they don't anymore, because they say it's a one vowel, not one vowel, it's a one syllable thing. Why are we bothering with accent marks? There's really no point, because it's only a one syllable word. Well, yes. So anyway, momentito, we'll get back to our ver. I'm going to show you what ver actually looks like, but it will skip the accent marks that you think you should normally have. And I think that's why they classify it as an irregular. So I don't know. Anyway, it'll be vi, viste, vio, vimos, vistes, vieron. Okay, so whereas the vio normally should get an accent mark, they say, well, shoot, that's really only one syllable. There's no need for an accent mark. And ditto with this. So vi, viste, vio. Okay, we're going to talk about what we saw or watched. Yo form. Vi, por ejemplo, vi un programa con las noticias anoche. Vi un programa con las noticias. I watched a show with the news. ¿Sí? Bien.
Sí, las sesiones del comité acerca las 6 de enero.
Sí, sí. Ok, bien. Excelente.
Mi esposo vio béisbol en la televisión el sábado.
Muy normal. Sí, los deportes. Es popular ver los deportes en la tele. Bien, sí. ¿Qué más? Yo vi también el torneo de tenis de Wimbledon hace 2 semanas ahora, no, 2 weeks ago. Ok, ¿qué más? Either vi or vio.
Yo vi una película en la tele, Lincoln Abrogado.
Ok. Sí, fue buen programa. Was that a good program?
Sí,
Sí.
sí.
Les gustó. You guys liked it. Ok, bien, bien. Algo más con vi o vio. Vi o vio.
Vi un programa sobre Patagonia en el televisor.
Ah, quiero ver, yo quiero
Sí.
ver el programa de Patagonia. Está en CNN, ¿no?
CNN, muy interesante sobre animales y floras, árboles y
La geografía. Sí. Y tiene Pedro Pascal. Oh, I love Pedro Pascal. Sí, lo adoro. I adore him.
Sí.
Okay.
y los personas hablan en español un poco.
Sí, Patagonia. Sí, hay muchos episodios de Patagonia, ¿no?
Sí,
Hay
sí.
muchos episodios. Bueno, sí. Patagonia es un programa, una serie, it's a series, que habla de la geografía, de la flora y de la fauna, los animales y las plantas que se encuentran en Patagonia. Patagonia es una región principalmente en Argentina, quizás un poquito más en Chile también,
Chile,
¿no?
sí,
En Chile.
sí.
Chile y Patagonia, muy al sur, way down in the south, ¿sí? En el cono del sur, en what they call el cono del sur in Spanish, the southern cone. Y es muy interesante, ¿sí? Tiene animales muy exóticos y sí. Ok, bueno, más con ver, con vi o vio, Wow, nice short verbs, aren't they? Vi, vio. Okay, vamos a ver. Let's take a look at IRs. And there's only going to be one here that really is going to break the rules. So we're going to give it we're going to change up my keyboard so I get this done right. We're going to put a nice dividing line here because the two above the dividing line are going to follow the regular rules, but the bottom one will not. But it's one of our verbs that is super, super common, ir. So we're going to practice with ir first. Ir, here, ir. Talk about where you lived in 2000. En el año 2000. En el año 2000. Viví aquí en Fountain Hills. Algo más? Anything?
Viví in Minnesota.
Bien. Okay.
Viví
en mi misma
en
casa.
Houston.
Bien. En Houston, en el estado de Texas. Bien. Sí. And the reason I only have a couple of those is that, we have to give that a marker. You know, quite often with vivir, I could say vivir, but notice I specifically put that en el año 2000. You know, if I talk about like my grandparents used to live, right? My grandparents lived someplace. It usually won't be vivieron or vivió. It usually won't be preterito. It'll usually be imperfecto. Okay. To use vivir, it's got to be something that's limited to time. But quite often when we talk about where somebody lived, you know, if it's not limited to a specific decade, a specific year, then it's going to be that imperfecto. That's why we haven't got a couple of examples with that, but vivir and vivió. How about salir? Salí, saliste, salió, salimos, salieron. Talk
Can I
about
ask?
when you left.
I have a question.
Sí, dime.
So when you say that viví, for example, like, you know, like what you say, so if I say viví in Jakarta and el año 2000, so I have to mention that to classify as preterita?
Yeah, buena pregunta.
You have to mention
right.
that.
Yeah, sí. Ok, a ver, If I'm just talking about a specific identifiable slice of time, if you will, then I will go into preterito. So people may use preterito, they may use imperfecto with vivir, pero depende. It depends on what idea they want to express. So, por ejemplo, if what you want to say is en el año 2000, viví en Jakarta. Ooh, I'm going to spell that wrong.
Yeah, without D. That's
Without the D. Oh, con
Without
corta
the
with a
D.
J? Okay.
Yeah,
I think that was an old weird English thing that
right.
people used
That's
to do,
right.
right? Yeah. And now English is trying to shift and really spell things the way they ought to be, right? Yeah, but you know, that's what we grew up with, us old people like me, las ancianas. Okay. En el año 2000 viví en Jakarta. Okay. So if you're talking about a specific year, viví is accurate because you want to pinpoint it, right? But if the idea you want to convey is more like, I used to live in Jakarta, and you're not limiting it to time, you're not limiting it to time, it would be more common to say vivía en Jakarta.
Okay.
And people may, but see, they're conveying a different idea. Okay, so por ejemplo, you know, a lot of times when we talk conversationally, we're really expressing the idea of I used to. And so this winds up being quite more frequently in Spanish, the imperfecto, but it really depends on the idea the person is trying to get across. Okay. So if the idea is I'm emphasizing, hey, at this particular point in time, then it flips into that realm of preterito, right? So quite often people very seamlessly move in Spanish between preterito and imperfecto, and it really depends on the idea in their head. And most of the time when we're chit-chatting with people, we're not necessarily pegging it to a year. Yeah. My grandparents used to live here. My aunt and uncle used to live there. And that used to is vivía, imperfecto. So
How about when I had my first, how about when I had my first child, I lived in Illinois? Is that a specific point in time, or is that telling a story and that's imperfecto?
That's telling a story. So let's take a good look at that. Es buena pregunta. Okay. Well, let me repeat this one. En el año 2000, viví en Jakarta. Okay. I am limiting it to a specific point in time. So viví is more appropriate. Pero cuando, when I had my kids.
Yeah.
Okay. When I had my kids,
or even just my first kid. You could even narrow it down.
I had my first kid. Was that an event when they were born?
It is, but maybe that's not what I...
It is. It is. Okay. Cuando, because your emphasis is that you gave birth to those children. When I had my kid, you're really focusing on the fact that I gave birth.
Okay.
Okay. So now it becomes an event. Cuando tuve mi primer hijo, mi primera hija, en tu caso, ¿no? Cuando tuve mi primera hija, when I had my first kid, and that was an event. And look how weird tener looks in preterito. Wow. Cuando tuve mi primera hija, vivía en Minnesota. I lived in Minnesota is not a cut and dry there. It means I was living in Minnesota, long time, long time, long time. Oop, I gave birth.
Yeah, I see.
That's why. This is considered an interrupting event,
Okay.
just something that was going on for a very long time here in Minnesota.
Okay.
Uh,
That makes
Um,
sense.
quite often in Spanish, we will split a sentence. A sentence will contain two actions. And when I've got two verbs and they're not sequential, it's not like saying, I woke up and I took a shower. I went to bed and I fell asleep. I chopped the vegetables, I sauteed them, and I served them in an hour. Those are all sequential, and they're all event, cut and dried. But when I had my kid, that happened, but I was living in that place before I had my kid, while I was giving birth, after I had my kid.
He talked about that in that video, didn't he?
Yeah,
Something about the
it's a
interrupting thing.
very, this happens a lot where you'll split and you'll have two different tenses, even though they're both in the past, but they're indicating different things. This is considered an interrupting action that happened with ongoing action in the past, which is imperfecto. Okay. Qué buena pregunta. What a good question that is. It's such a common thing for that to happen.
Two ways preterit, preterio.
Tu ves preterito, and it is very, very specific.
Okay.
It is not heard as much as tenía. Tenía is much more. So, okay, let's look at another way you might use tener with kids, still with kids. Por ejemplo, yo tenía dos hijos. I had two kids. That just says I had two kids. It doesn't say, it's not emphasizing, it's not emphasizing that I gave birth to them. It's just saying, hey, how many kids did you have? Oh, I had two. How many did you have? Yeah. There, we're just talking about literally describing what my family situation was. Yeah.
Good.
Tenía imperfecto. You will hear way more because it just means someone had something. We're not focusing on when they had it, just that they had it. It's like saying, oh, I had money in my pocket, but the emphasis is just that it existed, it was there. And that means that's not an event. It's not an event that something winds up in my pocket. It's just there. It was just there. Okay. Por ejemplo, for example, I might say, mi abuela, let's make this one. Mis abuelos, because there were two of them. Mis abuelos tenían 11 hijos.
Oh,
My grandparents had 11 children. Don't ask. Buena familia católica, nice Catholic family. Okay. Mis abuelos tenían 11 hijos. Mis abuelos tenían 11 hijos. Okay. And the emphasis is not that she gave birth all those 11 times. What a tired woman my grandmother was. Okay.
There were in the mosquito video, there was the use of the word tuvo, which threw me for a lot of loops.
Yeah.
Thinking, well, maybe it is there, because it was, I can't remember the context. Maybe it was that the pet had was very thirsty.
Yeah. Okay. So let me show you the difference with tener. Tener, you're going to wind up hearing a lot more in a conversational way, in a conversational, normal 15-minute conversation. You will hear that ia imperfecto way more. That is because tener an imperfecto always means had. And had is not an event. Had just means it existed. It was there. It was out there. I don't know when. I don't know when it started. I don't know when it finished. So tener in preterito gets a very specific and kind of different meaning than had. In preterito, tener is more the equivalent of got or received. It indicates an event. So here's how, and it's very irregular, muy irregular. So, okay.
In that video, it might have been when the mosquito had the dream. I just can't recall.
It could be.
Sueño.
Tuvo un sueño. Yeah, I had a dream. And not the Martin Luther King, I had a dream. That would be tenía, right? Yeah, but you know, like I had a dream last night, that kind of dream, right? Okay. Yeah, see, because then it's an event. Ooh, this thing happened to somebody, right? So mi hija tuvo un bebé. My daughter had a baby. Now we're talking about an event, not that she had a kid like when she was young, just she actually, this happened. The baby came on out. Mi hija tuvo un bebé. All right. Mi hija tuvo un bebé. She had a baby, meaning she gave birth to that child. Okay. Or you might hear something like this. Mis nietos, my grandkids, tuvieron un perrito. My grandkids got a little dog. There's a difference between tuvieron un perrito, which is they got a doggy, meaning they brought it home. That's an event. They welcomed it into the house. That happened and now it's done. And there hay gran diferencia. Mis nietos tenían un perrito. Now we're just saying they had a doggy. They had a doggy. I'm not talking about when they first brought him home. This is emphasizing they first brought him home. Tuvieron un perrito. That is the difference, that some verbs in Spanish, not all, but some, actually change the meaning of the basic verb when they flip into preterito, and tener is one of them. If I am talking about had in its most general sense, just that something existed in somebody's possession, it is going to be imperfecto. They had pets, they had a house, they had 2 cars. It's going to be tenía. But if the emphasis is that they got something, they obtained something, that this thing appeared and was brought into somebody's house, that is the got or the received idea of using tener in preterito. So tener is one of about, I'm going to peg it at around about a dozen verbs, about 10 verbs that changes its meaning in kind of a subtle but important way when we use it in preterito versus its very general use in imperfecto here. Okay, does that make sense now?
Yes.
While we're here on tener, could you just write out the full preterite conjugation on tener?
On tener, sí, lo puedo hacer. I can do it. As a matter of fact, I think I'm going to create I'll do that on a slide for you, but I'll put it up here. This is one of this will show you how weird the irregular preterites begin to look. Okay, so tener, er verb, you think it should be iste, yo, imos, ieron. That's what it should be, you think, because it's an er verb. And it will kind of do some of that some of the time, but not all of the time. Tuve, tuviste, tuvimos, tuviste, tuvo, tuvieron. So, oh, this looks like something you learned, and this looks like something you learned, and but no accent mark, it goes away. And oh, this looks normal. And then, oh, wait, that isn't supposed to be that. It's an ER verb, but no accent mark. Ooh, no accent mark. Irregular preterites get kind of a mashup. A mashup is a combination of two things that you already know that are separate entities, and they like meld together, and they use some elements from this and some elements from that. They're like a Venn diagram. And irregular preterites take some things from the AR ending table and take some things from the ER, IR ending table, and they get rid of the accent marks. And yeah, and they are legion, and there are a lot of them, and they're weird. And look at what happens here. Wait a minute. Tener, T-E-N. How the heck do you get a TUV out of that? God only knows.
Exactly. It's so confusing.
It is so confusing. So here, this is good this happened. Here's what here's what you should take away from this little blip. This little blip shows you that learn your preterito regular, the regular preterite. We only really saw one irregular preterite for ir, and we'll go back to that in a minute. There are so many irregulars in preterite, and in most cases, they don't even look like the verb they come from very much. So it's like, how the heck do you get that out of that infinitive? Well, they are so weird and so irregular that you really kind of need to, especially when you're doing it once a week, you need to say like, this week we're going to look at 2 irregulars, and that's it. Nothing more, because there are tables and tables and tables of them, and it'll totally blow your mind and say, well, I just can't learn this. I give up. So you really have to take them in teeny tiny chunks, little by little, poco a poco. And this verb even, I'm going to say it. Sí es importante. Sure. Okay. Yeah. Eventually you should know it, but you're not going to use that as much as you use ir. You're not going to use it as much. You're going to use this imperfecto with tener way more in everyday, and it follows a rule. So if you got to know tener in the past, this is the form you want to know. Tenía. This form, if you get pretty advanced, is helpful. Will you hear it? Yeah, but in a 15-minute conversation, not as usual, not as common. It has to be a specific context to use tuve. Whereas this is a very general context, the imperfecto, that you hear all the time. Because all the time we say things like, wow, I had 5 credit cards. I had 5 credit cards in this wallet, and I'm missing one. You hear people saying, gee, I had leaves strewn all over the yard from the storms last night, right? Oh, the dog had no food this morning. Time to feed him, right? We use had a lot, but most of the time in a conversational context, we use had way more in that tenía imperfecto. So should you know the tuve, tuviste? Yeah, but for later. It's limited to very specific circumstances. See, Trish.
So when you say my dog had no food this morning, then if it were preterito, it would be my dog had no food at 8 o'clock this morning. It has to be, am I mixed? When you
I
say this
wouldn't,
morning,
I wouldn't even. So yeah, my dog had no food. Mi perro no tenía comida. No tenía comida.
Okay, but if
Esta,
you say this.
even esta mañana, even this morning, esta mañana,
Okay,
not, yeah. So,
but
I
that sounds so stupid.
could say, esta mañana, mi perro no tuvo comida. And it would be like me saying in English, this morning, my dog got no food, got no food. I'm less likely to say my dog got no food this morning, but my dog had no food. It's kind of like the difference. Yeah. Tener in pretérito for tuvo means received.
Maybe I didn't get the promotion. Maybe then
Oh
you'd
yeah,
use
maybe. Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah. But
No.
see, is that something you talk about a lot? When do
No.
you use tener?
Yeah.
Yeah. So what do you want to know? You want to know the things you're likely to use a lot.
Yeah.
Tener, you're likely to use it. Not an exaggeration. 80% of the time, you're likely to use it in imperfecto. Right? I was hungry. Tenía hambre. Even if I say I was hungry at 8 o'clock, it's tenía hambre. Yeah. I mean, you might hear tuve hambre. I got hungry. Yeah, I got it. No, you're going to hear tenía hambre. You're going to hear tenía hambre. Tenía hambre, tenía sed, right? I was 20 years old at a certain time. Tenía 20 años. I was 20 years old. It's a description of age. Description of age is always imperfecto. Always. Yeah. The
So
only
in this
time.
case, if we wanted to make a conversation, like, talking about something in the past, the way to do the safer way to do it is doing it in a imperfecto.
Well, for some things, for tener, yes. For describing people,
Because it doesn't have to be specific, right?
Yeah.
Like if I don't know, this is my understanding. It's like that.
What you want to know is like if something happened and it's like, okay, stuff, it depends on the action itself. I ate. Preterite. It happened, right? If I make a comía, it means I used to eat. So if I want to talk about, I used to have ice cream every day when I was a little kid, then it's used to, and it's comía. But in a 15-minute conversation, are you more likely to say, I ate a sandwich? Yeah, it depends on the way your conversation is going. Yeah.
Okay.
And I hope to take a little look at that after our practice today, because it's an important thing for you to start to see. And you know what? Don't beat yourself up over it. You need to see those kinds of situations over and over and over and over until it starts to not feel weird. It will feel weird. It will feel weird for a while, but what? Oh, I saw it. I saw it again. I saw it again. Oh, again. Tenía 20 años. Tenía 15 años. I saw it again. The more you see that example, the more it sinks in. It is just, we have nothing in English to compare it to. We the best thing we have is that used to, yeah, or was doing something, but we have we get no traction with that in English. We have poor examples. Let's take a look. Let's dip our foot in the pool of one very weird, irregular preterito, one weird irregular, and that is ir, because this one conversationally we use a lot, and this one, it's the flip side. Conversationally, you're going to use ir in preterite way more than in imperfect.
Una pregunta
Sí,
antes.
sí.
On salir, when you leave, do you salió de someplace? Do you,
Sí,
do you have to have
sí.
the
Oh,
day?
we didn't do those. Oh, we need to do those. Okay, game. We can't go to ir. Gracias. Thank you. Gracias, Diana. Okay. Salir. We need to take a look at salir. Left. Yes. And quite often, we will have de.
You do have
And
day.
then that names the place you left. Yeah. Okay. So it'll be salí. This is regular. You know, you're used to having salgo. It's one of those go verbs for yo. It's weird in yo, and then it's okay for everything else. But muy regular. It's very regular in pretérito. Sí, saliste, salí, saliste, salimos, salió, salió, and salieron. Okay, left. And so, un ejemplo, por ejemplo, salí del consultorio del dentista.
Mhm.
I left the dentist's office a las 10. Salí del consultorio. You know? You might just hear somebody say, salí a las 10, I left at 10. But if they name the place that you're getting out of, then you need a de.
You do need the day.
Del consultorio del dentista, from the dentist's office. Okay. So, okay. Yeah, that de might become important if you're talking about the place you
Leaving.
left. So, salí del consultorio. Okay. We can talk, but let's see any examples you had with salir, talking about when you left a place or when somebody else left a place, a building, a location of any kind. Salí and salió.
Mi hija salió de su oficina a las 8.
Perfecto. Salió de la oficina. Left the
Ayer,
office.
ayer salí de mi casa para ir a pasear a un perro.
Perfecto, muy bien. Sí, para pasear con el perro. Muy bien. Pasear con el perro. Bien. Salí de la casa. Bien. Algo más. Something else.
Salí de mi casa ayer, fui a visitar mi cuñada.
Excelente. Muy bien. I went to visit. Sister-in-law. Sí, cuñada. Bien. Perfecto. Okay. Oh, Nora, you're on mute.
Ayer
I was
tarde,
looking over my notes from earlier this summer.
Mhm.
If I wanted to say something about this morning, would I again say acabo de salir? Acabo?
Oh, if you're talking about something recent, like I just did
Remind
this
me
this
again.
morning, you can do the cheat,
Yeah.
which it
you're
really
right.
isn't. It's legit. Yeah. Acabo de salir. I just left.
Okay,
Acabo de means just, and it makes it super recent. So
Okay.
somebody knows, oh, in the last hour, last couple hours. Yeah.
Okay.
Something recent.
okay, just kind of reviewing.
You can take acabar de and use acabar in presente. Acabo de salir, I just left.
Okay,
Sí, muy normal. Very, very normal thing to say. Okay. Bien, algo más con salí o salió. Salí o salió.
Salí de mi gimnasio a las 10:30.
Excelente. Sí, salí del gimnasio, de mi gimnasio a las 10:30. Perfecto. Perfecto. Okay. Bien. Let me give you something new. I'm going to give you a different use of salir that you hear a lot. This is something you hear people say a lot. Let's see if you can understand the context. Todo. ¿Qué es todo?
everyone.
Oh, everyone,
All or everything.
everyone.
Everything. Let's see if you can get what this means. Todo salió muy bien. Oh. Todo salió muy bien.
Everybody was good?
Oh, almost. Todo salió muy bien is kind of a special phrase. Todo salió muy bien. Everything
Everything.
turned out
Oh,
Oh,
really well.
Mm.
It means it's all good. Wow. Everything turned out just fine. Everything turned out just fine. Right? People also will say things like, mi hija salió muy bien en sus exámenes. My daughter came out really well in her exams. It's kind of like talking about an end result. Yeah. This is talking about an end result of some kind of event. And it might be something specific like an exam or just things turned out okay. Like, oh, party went well. Guests came on time. We had enough food. Everybody had a wonderful time. Then everybody left and I didn't feel exhausted. Todo salió muy bien. Everything worked out just great. Everything turned out because it came out. It was an outcome. It turned out. Oh, it turned out. Yeah. Salió bien. Okay.
Would you use that in the context of like, you know, a medical thing, you know?
Sí, es posible, sí. Sí, con mi visita al doctor, sí, todo salió bien. My doctor visit, everything turned out great. Todo salió muy bien. Sí, exacto. It's talking about the result of, you know, whatever happened, whatever that big event was. Excelente, sí. Okay. Let's take a look at ir. Tan importante. You will hear fui, fuiste, fue, fuimos, fueron. Conversationally, probably more than you'll hear the iba, ibas, iba, just because when we talk to people, you are more likely to say somebody went somewhere and it's an event and it happened. You're more likely to talk about that than saying, I used to go to da, da, da. Of course you could, but in a general conversation with Joe Schmo on the street, it's going to be these very odd, very weird verbs with ir. And they all have an F and an FU. And where the heck does FU come out of ir? Nobody knows, but that is what it is. So talk about where you went or where somebody else went. Fui a la ferretería. I went to the hardware store. Esta mañana fui a la ferretería. Today I went to Ace. Okay.
El sábado fui a la casa de mi hija.
Excelente. Bien. ¿Alguien más? Anybody else?
Ayer fui al banco y al supermercado Sprouts.
Okay. Excelente. Sí, fui. I went. Fui a. And it's always going to be fui a. Fui a or fue a or fueron a or fuimos a, right? Because and then we name the place where we wound up. Okay. Bien. ¿Algo más?
Fui al aeropuerto para ir de viaje.
Okay, perfecto, muy bien. Fui al aeropuerto. Exacto. Sí. Mi cuñada, my sister-in-law. Mi cuñada fue a Chautauqua en New York para una conferencia. Mi cuñada fue a Chautauqua.
Yeah, sí. Muy bien.
¿Dónde es Chacota?
Está en Nueva York. Es un pueblo muy pequeño, pero tienen conferencias muy interesantes todo el verano. Chautauqua es un lugar de vacaciones, ¿sí? Y, pero hay...
En Boulder.
Sí, como así, sí. Chautauqua está en Nueva York, está en el oeste de Nueva York, cerca de Canadá, cerca de Erie, está entre Erie, Pennsylvania y, ¿qué más? ¿Qué otra ciudad? No Sí, pero está en el oeste. It's way in the west. Está cerca del lago. It's near the big lake.
Chautauqua es una idea con estudiar
Con
nueve
sí,
ideas.
sí,
las personas hablan sobre temas popular y importante y cultural.
eso
Sí.
es exactamente. Chautauqua es una conferencia y todo el verano hay un tema muy general. Entonces, un verano, yo fui a Chautauqua un verano y el tema fue el medio ambiente, the environment. Y todos hablaron del océano y los animales en el océano, o de los árboles y cómo cuidar a los árboles, o del desierto, de muchos temas de la naturaleza. Otro año, quizás el tema es la arqueología, archaeology, por ejemplo, o la política, por ejemplo, o la tecnología y el internet, algo así. Siempre hay un tema para todo el verano y hay muchas conferencias, muchas personas famosas que vienen a hablar con la gente de su tema, de este tema. They always talk about something on that theme. Y sí, es como dar lecciones.
Sí.
Es como dar lecciones o discursos, speeches on specific things. Okay. Bien. I think what I am going to give you guys for next week. Ooh. Do we have time? We have time to fit one more thing in. We're going to fit one more item in. I think I'm going to give you 2 or 3, not more than that. 2 kind of irregular. I'm probably going to keep it to 2. Well, should we do 3? Vamos a ver. I'll see how long they are. We're going to take some oddball preterites that are oddballs that don't follow the rule. And I'll give you a set of slides, like the slides you had with imperfecto and preterito. This will be a cheat sheet on irregulars that will give you a general path that you can hang on to when you hear about irregulars. Okay, so I'll give you that. I think we're going to take a look at dar, to give, in preterito, because it's very common for us to use that, give. I gave him $50. I gave her a gift. I gave him advice. I gave, you gave, he gave, we gave. You hear that verb dar a lot. And I was going to say ver, but we'll see. We'll give you 2 irregulars, and I'll give you a general kind of a checklist that you can follow with irregulars. But what I do want to do with you guys before we leave is to take a little look at this idea of when we use one or the other. Again, combining the 2. And I'll give you a new but different little story to watch so that you can get used to people using the 2, both imperfecto and preterito, at the same time. But now we're just going to do like an easy identify these as preterite or imperfect. And they're going to go by fast, they say. So, I didn't have winter clothes. Is it preterite?
Imperfecto.
Imperfecto. I had 2 suitcases.
Imperfecto.
Imperfecto. It was hot.
Imperfecto.
Imperfecto. I packed my bags.
Imperfecto.
Preterito.
Completed, preterito. I had no money.
Imperfecto.
Perfecto.
Imperfecto. I had good vacations. That was yeah. Wait a minute. Oh, now I know that one was preterito.
Preterito.
Oh, I think because I hit it the wrong time. I visited important monuments.
Preterito.
Event.
Preterito.
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 Yeah. Whoop. There we go. Yeah. And I think I didn't hit my button fast enough on some of those. It went by and it dinged me, even though I hit the right one. Yeah. That
was
is
like
time.
that was like the Lucille Ball episode with the chocolates going by on the
Yeah.
conveyor.
It is exactly like that. I'll send you a link to that if you want to play that on your own. And that just says recognize preterito, recognize imperfecto, right? An easy one. I will give you a harder one. It will tell you to sort out descriptions and then keywords. So I'm going to give you a harder one to do. It'll be a word wall like that, but it won't fly by. It'll be take these and sort them into 4 categories. So the 4 categories are going to be like those rules, like descriptions. So one category is going to say imperfecto. One category is going to say preterito. And those are going to be like our reasons for using one or the other. And then it's going to have 2 more categories. And those are going to be time-related words that trigger preterito or imperfecto. So not the reasons, the rules, but rather things like un día, one day, or todos los días, every day, right? The time cues. So you'll get 4 different categories. It'll be kind of challenging, but it's kind of fun. I'm pretty sure it gives you your answers at the end. Yeah, I'm pretty sure I tested that one out. So I'll give you that, and I'll give you 2 new verbs, and I'll give you a story to listen to, and it's going to be a cute love story. So, oh yeah, it's going to be a cute love story. Okay, todo bien, all good?
I have a question for everyone. Maybe they know that maybe can help me to increase the memory of my brain, maybe adding some more gigabytes so that I can absorb faster.
Up here or in the computer?
Adding gigabytes.
And I zhuzh up the Wi-Fi. Yeah, and this, yeah.
Right?
I am just starting to go back. Today is my first day to go back to my first list. We'll see if I hit 30%. I'm not guaranteeing, baby. Although I might hit 30% because they're easy words. But knowing how my week has gone, it may not be, yeah, Mark will appreciate it. But, easy stuff like au début, pendant, yeah, easy stuff. So yeah, I'll probably get to 30%, but yeah. If you haven't tried Gold List thing, Gold List should be cycling around. If you started at the time I started, you'll be almost starting to review that first list. So, okay, todo bien, all good. See, hasta luego. Let's all hope for rain. Maybe by the end of the week.
Adios.
Okay, adios, hasta luego.
Gracias.
Gracias.
De nada, de nada.